Hi, my name is Jamie Tomey, and I am pleased to welcome you to the Evanston Bound Quarantour series, brought to you by Artist Book House. Each week we get to talk to some amazing book artists and writers, letterpress printers, and paper makers. It's such a good time. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Pam. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Excited to see you, Jamie, and everybody that's joined us here.
I am so happy that you said yes. And I think the last time we saw each other in person did you come in February to our party?
I did, yes, I did.
I think that was it then, the last time I saw you in person, which prior to that was last fall at the library. And then prior to that was probably 10 years ago or something like that. It's so crazy how time flies, not only in pandemic times, but also in normal times. Why don't you tell us how you became a book artist?
I'll do the cliff notes on that one. I started actually as a calligrapher, a lettering artist. And as a lettering artist, I was, time went on and I started purchasing all this handmade paper that was so beautiful. I just loved working on a substrate that had such beauty to it. And I thought, well, why not, if you're gonna, work on handmade paper, why not make your own handmade paper? So I looked around, and that's when I found Marilyn Sword and Linda Sorkin-Eisenberg and Paper Press, and became very involved with that process. And after I started making paper, I fell in love so much with paper that I thought sometimes it was an art unto itself, which it certainly is. And so I sort of took it in that realm as well. But then if you have letters and paper, then of course it only makes sense that you would put them together in a book at some point in time. Yeah. And it was actually through the interdisciplinary arts program at Columbia where I studied, the bookmaking process. But I think probably most of my instructors were a little frustrated because we were doing traditional work, but I would usually run out and find a cornstalk to bind on or something alternative do with it. So I'm always, or cutting up a book.
Or sawing a book apart and then sanding it into a lovely little rock.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's sort of the little piece of it. Yeah. And I love books and paper and letters and everything else that goes with it.
Ever since. And speaking of Marilyn Sword, years ago, and this is something that we can mention in a minute, but years and years ago, you started a project with Marilyn Sword called Tree Whispers, which is one of my favorite things ever. And I have stolen it and used it with kids when I've made little circle handmade paper with kids, the tin can, Arnold Grummer's tin can paper making with little kids and big kids, and then have strung them into Tree Whispers and hung them around. And so I've stolen it in that way. I also have
you're not stealing, Jamie, you're collaborating.
I'm collaborating.
That's a collaboration.
Yes. Artists steal, and we love it. But yes, so talk to us a little bit about Tree Whispers and how that started with Marilyn and how that has then grown into its own, no pun intended, grown into its own thing with all kinds of branches.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, no pun.
Yeah, right. Well, actually it started the way a lot of my work, most of my work has started, and I kind of wanted to focus on that today. It's a bike ride that I take up, well, now my bike ride is up the Green Bay Trail. You probably know the area, Jamie. And cutting across on Lake Cook and coming down through the Botanic Gardens and through the Skokie Lagoons. It's about a 15-mile ride. Yeah. And I've always thought of my bike ride as my commute because I work at home. So I go out and I come back.
Yeah.
and of course it's my exercise. And it's also sort of my business meeting. What am I going to do for the day?
Your
But
business
then
name.
also I realized that it's a meditation, and it's not something that I go out thinking I'm going to meditate, but it's after the sort of the first half of the ride where everything's yeah, I hear all the chatter and what am I going to do and blah, blah, blah. And then it sort of, everything kind of clears. And it's in that second half of the bike ride that I've actually had, well, whatever you want to call them, visions or thoughts or ideas. And that's where most of my work comes from, is in that space as I'm writing, where my head just clears and it's like I'm open to whatever it is that comes. And it was on that ride that I glanced over one day and I actually saw what looks like tree whispers, which are all these hanging rounds of paper. There's this sort of a small forest as I went by, and I thought, oh my gosh, that just looks like a paper installation. I was so excited about it. And I was supposed to meet with Marilyn, or drop off some artwork to Marilyn's house. She was having an exhibition, and she usually wasn't home, so she told me where to leave it, if she was there.
Yeah. In
Wasn't
that
there.
little
So
great
stopped.
little yellow house, that wonderful little yellow house that she lived on Asbury at just south of Dempster. Yeah, I love that little.
I know. So I knocked on the door thinking she wasn't going to be home, and she was home. And I was like, Marilyn, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I have to tell you, what I saw, these ideas. And so we sat on her porch, that hot summer day, and drank lemonade and talked about it. And she goes, well, how about if we collaborate? And I was like, yes, that would be awesome. I mean, she's the one who taught me paper making. She was, my mentor in this process.
Yeah.
And the more we talked, we realized we could easily create the paper. She had a studio herself, beautiful studio in the woods, and we could go up there and make all this paper. But we realized this was not about us. This was really about gathering other people, collaborating with other people, creating these rounds of paper, sharing tree stories, all this paper, and tree art on the paper, and bringing it all together in one place. And it sort of started like kind of a Johnny Appleseed kind of a thing. We just started sharing the idea. She went to the IAPMA conference, I think it was in Italy that year, and she went there, and we made some handouts and some tiny little rounds and sort of seeded the project that way. And but
and I
I
love
don't
how
know if I ever told you, the first box of rounds came from a teacher who came to a garage sale I was having, and she was looking around. She goes, well, this is kind of unusual stuff. Are you an artist? And I said, yeah. And so we started talking. I found out she was a teacher, so I told her about the project. And she was an elementary art teacher in Gurnee, and she did the project on an art cart, no less, in Gurnee. And that was the first box of rounds that we received. So that was very exciting. Yeah.
I love that. And those kids that made that paper now are 20 years older and probably haven't forgotten it. I love that.
Yes. This was 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago this year that you started the project. So you have a video to show us, and hopefully not.
Okay, so onward.
So Katie mentioned in the chat that when I was talking about Marilyn during the video, the music was skipping over and my voice was skipping in and out. So we're gonna actually ask you to send us the video and we can edit it when we have the final edit. But I was saying that Marilyn Sword was one of the founders of Paper Press. She lived here in Evanston and founded Paper Press in Chicago, and Paper Press merged with Artist Bookworks back in the day to create the Book and Paper Center, which became part of Columbia College, which became the Center for Book and Paper Arts, which is where a lot of us got our MFA from, and they closed a couple of years ago. And that is our precursor to Artist Bookhouse. So I remember Marilyn's energy, and she was an amazing woman. So I just wanted to mention those things about her. So Tree Whispers is 20 years old this year.
20 years old, yes.
And
yes.
where are some of the places that it has traveled? Where has it been?
Well, that was on the video, which will have been played already, but the last place it was in the Dawes Arboretum in Newark, Ohio. That was right before I gathered everything up and brought it home right before the pandemic started. Amanda Love had orchestrated, I think it was 23 paper making, some really astronomical number of paper making opportunities for the community there. And then I was had just been in New York doing a paper making workshop with some, let's see, first graders, I guess it was. Mrs. Mill's second grade class, guess it was. And
oh, that's great.
Right before, but it's been in the UAE twice. I've been over there, both for their book arts, which was super amazing. There were two opportunities, one for an exhibition and one for the paper making process itself, which taking the paper making process over there was quite an interesting puzzle to figure out, in that I didn't really know what I was going to be dealing with when I got over there, but they were so accommodating and wonderful. It was quite an experience. Also, a real highlight was, they're all highlights, everyone has been wonderful, was I had a phone call one day from someone from Greenpeace, and I thought, I guess I got an email and I wasn't sure if it was real or not. But then I followed up on it, and they were looking for an artist to collaborate with one of their projects. And I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like my life is complete now. It's like, this is it. This is, and it was working on saving a forest in Canada. And it was such an amazing process. It was, we installed Tree Whispers in like a day at the Javits Center. If you've been there, it's this massive building in New York City. For their, I guess it was book festival. So thousands of people were coming through there, but they wanted some kind of art to draw people into their booth. That was the whole point, is that they wanted something, that people would see in this massive building. Yeah. And so we built this sort of big arbor kind of a thing and strung them, and it did. You could see it from far away, and it drew people in just out of curiosity, and then they were able to engage people that way. So it's been...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's just great.
I'm just saying there's quite a list. On the Tree Whispers website, which is, by the way, treewhispers.com, there's a list of ongoing, or I try and keep a blog going, and a lot of the images of the work that people have sent in, as well as events. There is also on hold a group in Dallas that had done all this beautiful work, and I think they have 30 large strands that they're ready to hang, and that was held up by both, well, the pandemic, and then the gallery closed right before they were ready to show, and then the pandemic. So there's still more coming, but it's an ongoing process, and anybody is invited, you'll see, to participate, either making paper or sharing, or we can share paper from paper makers and write your story, poetry, tree art. There's quite a wide variety.
That is so cool. And one of the things that I think is so lovely about Tree Whispers is that it started out with this tiny seed, and that metaphor, of course, is actually intended, but started out with this tiny seed of an idea that you brought to Maryland, and then you made it into this gorgeous 20-year expanded forest project. It's just so lovely. So speaking of collaboration, and also pandemic ending things, you and I have talked a little bit about how your work and your life has changed due to COVID. Can you just mention a little bit of that, of what has happened this year that sort of stopped you from working, and then what has started you to work again?
I'll be very brief. Once the pandemic hit, there were also well, 3 great losses too of dear friends and mentors in my life. Here's this beautiful studio waiting, and all this time, but I just felt like there was, the muse had left. There was nothing. I just felt like I wasn't in a space to create. And I took that time actually to plant another little garden, and thanks to Melissa J. Craig, raise butterflies, which I've been doing the last couple of years, and ride my bike, and you know, anything I could do to get, you know, out in nature, take walks in the forest reserve or whatever. And there was several months where there was really nothing. And then Michael Swears invited me to be involved with this project, which I'll let him talk about. But it was that seed that even though I said yes to him, I was sort of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But it was something that initiated the creative process again. And I felt like once things got going and the bike rides ensued, that the muse began to join in and bring their friends as well. So.
Hold on, Mom, I'm going to have to mute you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was talking to your dad.
Okay.
He's making me a creche.
Okay. Hi, Dad. Oh, I'm sorry, Pam. Go ahead. Pam, go ahead. Pam, you're muted. Pam, you're muted.
Okay. How am I now? Okay.
Yeah. You're
sorry.
So I guess this would be a timely place to introduce Michael and let him talk about the project. I think that was
yeah. So let me introduce our double guest today. I'm so excited about this because we are, as Artist Bookhouse, we of course love collaborations between writers and artists. And I'm going to probably say your name wrong, Michael. Michael Swears.
Oh, you got it.
Oh, yay. Michael Swears is a poet, maker, and participatory ecologist. His work synthesizes aspects of poetry, visual art, translation, subsistence, earth repair, and interspecies communications. He has tended livestock, lived in rural Nahu, I can't see that because my eyes are terrible. I'm going to miss this too.
That says Nahuatl.
Nahuatl speaking community. Thank you. Gathered ancient prairie seed from the remnant railroad areas in the Midwest. He lives at a house on the prairie, a rural homestead with 15-acre prairie reconstruction, 72 miles southwest of Chicago. Welcome to our quarantour, Michael. I am happy to have you here. Can you talk about the seed project that inspired Pam's work during this time?
Indeed, sure. Thank you. It's very lovely to be here. I also wanted to just express personally how much I love Tree Whispers. I just think it's so lovely how the working of so many different hands coming together, and that it gathers things from the world, and it just really feels like it lives like a forest.
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely project. And I'm glad it's
Yes.
celebrating 20 years and still going strong.
Yes, me too. It continues to live. So I'm a writer, and at the same time, I also spend a lot of time in nature with gathering seeds and planting them in places and helping, like bring life to the prairie. And when COVID started this year, I spent a lot more time in the country, and a lot more of my days sort of communicating and just like being in communion with flowers and with butterflies and bees. And my writing practice kind of shifted where it was a lot more of this like sort of like non-human communication, and I started to have these experiences, and like the directionality of the stories was just like totally different. And I wanted to sort of share this experience with other people. And so I sort of developed this series of kind of like experiments, except that I called them seeds instead of experiments, because it's not like doing an experiment. It's kind of like planting a seed and then like exploring it and like having a different kind of experience. So I developed a few of these, and I've been working with different people, and I ended up doing one with Pam. I invited her to do one. I don't know if we want to go through maybe a few of them, or
Yeah, do you want,
if that makes sense.
I'm going to share the screen again.
okay, and I've spotlighted your video, Michael, so you'll be the little head off to the side talking at this point.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. All right. Michael, I'll let you go ahead and talk.
So I would have these little moments like in this video where this is like a thistle flower of seeds with all these other seeds that were on it, and it just, in the middle of my day, these bright objects would appear, and they're just so magical and ephemeral at the same time. And it was like holding this beautiful, this like miraculous sculpture that would then be gone, and of course I would have to give it to a tree, and slowly the wind would, like sort of like piece it apart, and it would fall, and the seeds would sprout, and then, you would have like a prairie that would grow out of this object. But the question was how to capture this, object, which belongs in this grass here, like, so I ended up developing these experiments to try to like just that anyone could do, where you could start to like make an action or think in that sort of a way, like in that moment. If you want to skip ahead a few, Pam, we could maybe look at the experiment.
There's a beautiful essay that'd be great to put up, but here's one of the, I'll go ahead, Michael.
So the first seed that I sort of proposed to people was just to spend some time in one of your favorite places out in the forest or in nature somewhere, and to observe, and then to just leave a trace in it that you think would be helpful. So kind of almost like, instead of like trying to like avoid stepping on things, like what can you use your hands to like bring life and love into the environment. It's a very basic act, but like just sort of flipping that and thinking about ways we as human beings can like, we can bring life and create,
Yeah, instead of destroy, make it better.
Yeah, because we do that too, It's like just the other side of the story. Just start to think about that. So another one, I worked collaboratively with a pair of artists who go by Local Style that are in Chicago, and we developed this one together. And the idea was to pick another species and think about how it feels and what its emotions are, and whether are there ones that we share with, like, they chose a bumblebee. So like, what sort of feelings does a bumblebee have? Are they the same as the ones we have, or what ways do they feel it's different? And they made a really lovely video, and they explored I guess it turns out the color purple is something of an imaginary color that people like that we make up. I didn't know this, but it's apparently, I don't know exactly um, the science of it, but somehow it's an imaginary color. Like we invent it, and bees invent a different color that's called bee purple.
Be
Um,
purple.
yeah, so
Oh my God.
they have a similar color like we invent purple. They invent this other color that's,
Oh,
we can't even see. It's like an ultraviolet color, you know, it's like not even
yeah.
visible to us.
Yeah.
So they made a video called Be Nice, which was about like kindness, but like what would that be if you were being a bee?
If you were
Um,
a bee.
so
Oh my God.
that's another one. And then the next one that I did was with a dancer that I know in Catalonia in Spain, in Barcelona, and I invited her to have a dance with the forest essentially, as like I made up this word humanimal. So like if she was like a human, but like as an animal, like how she would fit in, you know, if the forest was her dance partner, you know.
Right,
Um,
right.
so she did a few seed dances like this. Um, and that was really, really wonderful too. Um, you could skip to the next one, Pam. And then, so this all kind of fit in. It ended up fitting into a show at the House of World Cultures Museum in Berlin. And this is an art piece we're looking at now that was part of that show, but it's also one of the seeds. And this one I collaborated with a good friend of mine named Maureen Walrath. And we made a sort of like a build your own guide, which invites the people who from anywhere really to make your own miniature boat. The other year we actually built a boat out of skin and willow, and
Okay.
so we're inviting people to make their own miniature one out of anything that's around them. And the other side of it, if you skip to the next one, has more of the instructions on how to do so. And then there's a seed that you do at the end where you take the boat and you kind of give it back to the ecosystem.
Oh, cool.
Um, and we asked people to use the star map that's in the middle of this and to invent a new constellation in the sky, which of course doesn't erase or remove any of the constellations that are already there that we know, but you can invent your own. And just to invite people to sort of like imagine, you know, new stories. I think that as we're kind of in a new time now with COVID and just with a lot of things, it feels like we're kind of like in a new moment, and to like use our imaginations to invent new stories that like can
Yeah.
carry us into the future, you know, in new ways.
Yeah.
So very much an invitation to that. And a lot of these seeds I think are like that. And this is you could access this particular work on the House of World Culture's website if you looked up Shape of a Practice.
Mm.
And if you want to make your own boat, you could go there, and I would love to see it if you wanted to, you know, email either me or Pam afterwards. And if you make up a constellation, or you're also invited to write the story of the constellation that
I love this.
you draw.
The seeds that you came up with for the projects, they're essentially prompts to direct imagination. Kind of
Yeah,
like,
kind of like to an invitation, I think of them. Yeah.
right, to say, hey, why don't you try this and see where it takes you? And it takes everybody a different place, of course, and then people can share the work and their ideas on the website. Or do you have an Instagram for this, or is there a way that you have been gathering all of these things, or is it just that you're collaborating with different artists for each
Well,
thing?
it
Like,
started as specific clever. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just asking if it was open to the public to have, you know, because I think of this boat project and the constellation and the myth. I think of that would be a lovely thing for a group of fifth graders to do and to work on as an arts integrated lesson in their, you know, social studies class or something. So tell us more about how the process came to be where you're working with these different artists, and then is it open to everyone?
Oh yes, it's totally open to everyone. So part of the sort of collaborative invitation came out of the context of this show and just wanting to sort of like include other people. And I think part of it comes from this year. Largely so, this invitation comes from a sense of wanting to sort of like build a community and a group of people and
Mhm.
togetherness in this
Mhm.
time when we're not necessarily physically together, but like we can be together by like by doing the same, trying out the same new things that we don't know what we're going to get in the end is, you know. And to
Right,
me that's kind of exciting too. There's like a surprise in it, and that's what I love about writing and language as well, you know, is that like you don't know what's going to happen. You
right.
know, it's this like it's always a surprise, and at the end like you're like, that's me, you know. This who knew? But then you know, and it's like you're somebody different, you know.
Right.
But to so the prompts were all like, they're all invitations to anyone who wants to do them. And yeah, if people sent them, I would gladly put them up on my Instagram, or you know, like we're working on new venues. I think this is going to continue to travel, and like so there will be new formats in the context of this boat for this the miniature hide boat piece, which I did with my friend Maureen. Um, the way it was presented at a show in Berlin about the current moment in relation to climate. But the format of this piece is that it was printed as like a series of fold up like take home guides. So people
Mhm.
who went there were invited to take one with them, and then to make their own boat and to send that back in.
Oh,
Um, so I think the show is going to travel around a little bit in the States now. So we're hoping to gather more, you know, more constructions. And if anyone wants to build a boat, I would love to put a small show on, perhaps even at the house I live in the country. I see it also as like it's a residency space for people to come, and I've invited people to come for a month and they work on projects. That's been a
nice.
format, but also like to have a gallery in a town of 250 people. And I would love to have a show of miniature boats, you know. And the instructions here, like sort of like the invitation, it invites you to just build out of whatever you have around you and think about what you want to make and like what the qualities are, and then to find that in the world,
Yeah,
which is very important about our process too, rather than being like you need to get, you know, like this type of like, you know, like plastic skin or like a cow
right,
hide or whatever. It's like whatever you can find that meets what you want.
right,
So
exactly.
it's about being exploratory like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally open to invitation. Um, and then so another seed that um, came as part of this series was one that I invited Pam to do, and it's actually the shortest in terms of language seed of them all. But I think it also just became so expansive. But the
Mhm.
name of this one was called Self-inscription, and um, something that's important to me. Thinking of myself as like a nature being or like an earthling is like really feeling like I'm a part of the earth, a part of all the other species, you know, and like nature, like I am part of it.
Mhm.
And so this one's called Self-inscription, and I thought about it as an act of writing. And so I just gave Pam these two lines, write so that the land can read you and finds you beautiful, which I left totally open. Like, how
Yeah.
does one even write so that the land can read you? You know, is it going to be
Right.
with a pen?
Right.
And I
How does
thought, it,
definition there?
yeah. And then how do you know?
Yeah. How do you know? How do you know the land finds you beautiful and has read you? I love that.
That was
What?
So,
fun.
Go ahead,
so
Pam.
yeah, so Michael gave me this, and I can't tell you how many times I read this to really get it into my head. Write so the land can read you and find you beautiful. As a calligrapher, I think about writing, but so the land can read you, that tripped me up. But this is what I took with me on my bike ride, like every single day. I was like, what does this mean? How can it find you beautiful? What can I write that would be even worthy? Because typically I'm trying to read the land. I mean, I realize, especially, you know, watching it through the many months, all these very subtle different changes. And there's so much I know I'm missing. I mean, most of it, you know, but I'm really trying to pay attention. But what do I have that's worthy of writing and finds you beautiful? So let's see where I went with this. Trying to think. Oh, so here's my bike ride. I'll segue out of this very briefly. So this is really early on. I just wanted to show you how it sort of changes. And again, the many changes that I see along the way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
all this time I'm thinking, write so the land can read you. And then also, you know, being observant of the many things that are, you know, on the land, of the land, and the different changes that are happening. And finally, I came to think about, I play the Native American flute, which has been really important to me. I feel like you play from your heart. And I was thinking music is a language as well. And so what if I took the first phrase that I played when I very first learned to play the flute and transcribe that? I'd never, in the Native American flute, they have what's called tablature. So this is sort of the language, or the written, how you can see what the notes are. So this is the scale, the 6-note scale. And then what I did was with the D flute, I've, you know, put all the notes with it, and then the coloration also that goes with each note. That's a whole nother webinar, but we won't go into that right now. But color is associated with that certain color is a vibration, as is sound. So I'll simply say that. So this is the very first phrase that when I really learned to play, that this is what I would play. This would start out every song that I played from my heart. And so is D, A, should be 2 Ds, C, D, and these are the colors. So what I ended up doing as I was riding my bike through and through and through, I noticed these reeds, these standing reeds. And I thought, well, what if I were to paint these colors like a score in the landscape? That would be writing. And I felt like, since it was from my heart, that felt beautiful. At least I hoped it would be. So here's the reeds. And I don't know if you can hear the music.
Okay, I have some technical questions for you, Pam.
Yes.
So Katie actually mentioned in the chat a minute ago, it's hard to be detailed observant when on a bike. Do you stop on your bike rides and pause for a few minutes to look at things when you're writing?
Well, both. I mean, these reeds have caught my attention a lot. And again, it's like that changing of the season too. You know, they went from this voluptuous kind of side greenery to these sort of just standing reeds. And but yes, I do stop a lot. What could be a 45-minute hour bike ride can turn into 2 or 3 hours, because sometimes I'll stop and photograph or just go for a hike or something off of the trail. So
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. And then for the paint on these, I assume you carried a little thing of paints, and then did you paint all of them at once? How did you choose which reeds? What was the process that came into the actual piece itself when you stopped to paint? Like what were the decisions?
There were two sort of beautiful areas where there were these sort of standing reeds, and one area had sort of this, let's see, how can I describe it? Several reeds in front and then reeds in the back. And I felt like if I took these reeds, my daughter went and helped me. She brought the paint, and this was actually a one-time thing that I did, where I painted them in the order of the score. So
Yeah.
this is all to the score with some riffing in the back.
Yeah.
I always thought it would be fun to go back, and I thought, well, it felt so like there was something about it that was profoundly finished after I did it. There was something kind of remarkable about that day. It just felt like, yes, that's done.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I always feel like, oh, I could go back in, or I could do this, and it just felt like, no, that was it. That was done, you know.
Yeah.
And so, let's see. Well, and as I mentioned, I was raising butterflies again all summer, which took me to the milkweed patches, and there's lots of milkweed patches that are along the trail as well. And I started to watch these change as well as they turn from this beautiful lush green to the sort of more yellow, and then all of a sudden those start to fade. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's got to be text on this milkweed. Oh my gosh, I could just see the text. And Michael gifted this text. Michael, I'll let you read that.
Okay. Today I went out and seeded Sullivan's milkweed seeds into the pollinator patch I started this year. It was overcast and roughly windy while I was out working in the patch. Beautiful.
So he sent me that, and I thought, oh my gosh. And so what I ended up doing was to write it out on like washi paper, and then go out and apply it to the leaves themselves.
Oh my goodness.
There's some that I brought back because, again,
and some brought back. Yeah.
Some brought back because there's this timeliness to everything. Not only are the leaves starting to turn and fall, there's also these slow burns that people are doing, to clear the areas as well. Yeah. But it also then, as the pods started to come and this whole color shift and the seeds started to bulge out of the pods, I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'll make some pods that could actually be applied. So I took some, this is where the book arts comes in, altered book art, and actually sort of married those with some of the milkweed that was there. These are some that I did actually in the studio, but then I also went out and worked right in the land as well.
Wow. And can you, I'm thinking of a person just walking through this path, and my dog, of course, is barking right now. And coming upon these beautiful pieces, this wonderful artwork, and not quite knowing what it is, but seeing it. I love that idea. And Katie says in the chat, these are wonderful.
The funny thing is too, Jamie, that I, as I was working, it's right along the bicycle path. I mean, it's right on the path. And as many times as I was doing these things, nobody ever stopped. Well, at the very end, I've had one person ask me what I was doing. I told Michael, I said, it's like I'm not even there. Or who knows? I mean, it's like, what is she doing? I don't know. But just the beauty of the seeds and the milkweed, and of course, then I couldn't help myself. I had to put some letterpress on the seeds and send them out, so that it's seeded with an alphabet out in the prairie.
Oh my goodness, that is just so great. And for those of you on the Zoom right now who don't know, milkweed makes lovely paper as well.
Absolutely.
And it is one of the things that we love to make paper out of. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, cattails.
Cattails, yeah. There's, the cattail cells, which also are changing, you know, how they have the real sort of the firm little heads that they have. And then as they start to puff out and become these wonderful little just puff balls, I thought, oh my gosh. And I don't know, just the beauty of this bike ride. It was like every time I went, of course, it's might be a different time of the day, or the sun is different, or, you know, and things are changing all the time. To me, it was such a gift to be able to spend that time in this area. And it was like these candles lit up. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to thread some text through those cattails and have it come through so that it would be part of the plant itself. And then Michael wrote this beautiful poem that seemed to go with it. And Michael, do you want to read this as I scroll through the next few?
Sure. Okay. The titmice feast from now through eternity. In my attachment to the wind, when I peel myself back from it, my back runs with it. Was there a shadow there? Or now a high noon sunburst? Tomorrow cloud and stillness, my back the shape of the wind, my wind-shaped back, the wind's own shape. The titmice feast from now through eternity.
So on with the bike ride, I realized I saw this, well, there's a hill, one hill. I'm a flatlander when it comes to bike ride. One hill on the just west of the Botanic Gardens, which I realized is the remnants of a glacier. Who knew? And my daughter called me one day, and there was a bench right here near here. And I sat down, and there was this tree right there, this tiny little tree, and had these little spiky ends on the branches. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's simply an invitation. And so I was about, you know, seeding the tree, so to speak. So I took the more paper and a binding. So that's kind of a book, right? You take paper and you bind.
It's a book.
Right, there you go. And then again, Michael, I'll let you read the poem that came in context to this piece.
Seed eaters, flycatchers, puzzle keepers, fire extinguishers. One by one, marshals of the sun, from the shadow of my shelter, I watch as I wait. Oh, how the wind scrolls, unanonymous. Weathering or weatherless, I wait as I watch. Seed eaters, flycatchers, puzzle keepers, fire extinguishers. Compost pile of rhizomes heaping up earth, decomposing at the root tip, metamorphosing at the meristem. I forget the answers I was being asked. I cook up the questions to remember again. When star-like, suddenly, chickadee-dee-dee.
And this is actually on just a walk one day. I saw this on, I think it's a dawn redwood. And it was like, oh my gosh, that looks just like the little tree bundles that we put.
Yeah, your little books that you put on the tree.
Right, other little books. So let's see how we doing on time. Okay, real quickly.
Just really quickly, just really quickly, Katie saying what a treat it would be to come upon something like this. And I do want to mention that if anybody wants to jump off of the Zoom, that's fine. The recording will be put up. Of course, you can visit the last few bits. So go ahead, Pam. Oh.
So this was just an open invitation, right, for a little library. And this is the one place, I think because it involved a ladder, that some woman, even though many, many people went by, there was one woman that stopped and inquired, you know, what are you doing? And so we actually got to have a conversation. And I did tell her there were other installations along the path. And so she was going to be on the lookout. And then very quickly, this has been an amazing year for leaves, I think. And maybe it's just because I don't know, picking more of them up. And I've been putting them in books to press them. And it's so funny when I opened them up, the titles that were with them, "Don't shoot, I'm unarmed." With one. And these were not intentional. This is actually where these were found. And I just thought they were so very beautiful, and something too about them on the text.
Yeah. The happenstance of the text with the leaf.
Right.
And I love it years later when you open up a book and you find a leaf that you gathered before. Oh, so wonder.
We completed our and Jamie, this was really like I said, these are things that have just been very what's the word, Michael? Circumstantial, or it's not like this was intended to be an exhibit or or anything. It was, I sort of put these together. Of course, I have hundreds of photographs, but for today. So, and actually, it was kind of fun to put it into sort of a context as well. So
yeah, you curated the work that you did all through the COVID to make it be something that you showed us, but it also, I am imagining, helped you to think through some of the process a little bit more.
Yeah, no,
and then that breeds the question, what is it for? Who is it for? Because originally it's for you to make work and to get yourself out of that spot of muse missing, I guess. But then once you show it to the world, and then of course, like Katie mentioned, happening upon it on the path, what a lovely thing to see when you're walking along. And so that begs the question, who is it for? Is it for you? Is it for the birds? Is it for people walking by? Is it for us to view during this quarantine? Who's it for? And I don't think there's an answer really to that question, but you're welcome to try to answer it. I don't know. I think it's just lovely. And I do want to say thank you so much for coming today. It was a wonderful conversation and a wonderful look. And of course, we could dive more into deeper questions here. And we could also talk more about your paper making and your calligraphy on paper and your big sheets and all of your things as well. But I think we're out of time. We do usually have a few minutes where we stop the recording and we let people say thank you and goodbye and such in that. But before we get to that point, I want to say thank you, Pam, for being here today. And thank you to Michael for being here as well. It's wonderful to have the poet with the artist. And I loved the idea of this collaboration and the Seed Project. So if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat your website for the Seed Project or your email address, that would be great. And then lastly, I want to say thank you to everybody for being here and coming to these quarantines all through 2020. We started back in April. We didn't know where they were going to lead us. We didn't know that we were building a library of these quarantines for our website and for this time. And I have to say thank you to everyone for joining me every week. And I also want to mention that we have 2 more corn tours for this year, and then everything will shift for 2021. We're looking forward, and we are going to continue to have recorded conversations with artists, but they won't be live on Thursdays anymore. But you can find all of our corn tours and those future Evanston Bound conversations on our website when those get released. So thank you everyone for being here and for supporting Artist Bookhouse. What's that, Pam?
Thank you. You've done an amazing job in all your interviews and questions.
Thank you, Pam. Hi again. Thank you so much for watching this week's Quarant Tour. We really appreciate your support. If you want to learn more about our guest from today, please read the description below. And if you'd like to support more programming like this, coming from Artist Bookhouse, please visit our website at artistbookhouse.org/donate. Thank you again for joining us.